Hello and welcome to the Meaning Project podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Daniel A. Franz. As always, thank you for this opportunity to bring a little bit of mental health, meaning, purpose, resilience, and psychedelics to your day. I promise you, maybe by episode 200 we'll have that tagline figured out. I doubt it, um, because that's just kind of the nature of what I do. Boy, do I do a lot of different things. I guess, and not to pat myself on the back, that's 25 years of experience. That is um, the regular necessity in my field. We have to do 20 hours of continuing education every year. I've done my 20 hours in different ways over 25 years. That's a lot of hours. Sometimes I do a little bit more than those 20 hours, like, going for a doctorate or psychedelic assisted studies and things like that. But it's always been things I've been interested in, like Frankl's psychology of meaning. And, well, this latest training in the past year in psychedelic assisted therapy. Why, Dan? Why are you studying psychedelics? Well, I got to tell you, it's been interesting since entering into this world. Um, the people I've run into that are interested in this, or, you know, some people that maybe have experimented earlier or at different times in their lives. I just got off a great call, feeling very energized, with another somewhat local to my area psychedelic assisted therapist who specializes in a variety of things. This person's a little bit more shamanistic, did a 3 year kind of indigenous training, whereas my training right now with the Integrative Psychiatry Institute is a little more modern research based. So it was a real interesting kind of collision of worlds in this person's indigenous training. That training that I talk about goes back hundreds, maybe thousands of years in some cultures, compared to my training that goes back, less than 100, maybe 15 or 50 years to when Albert Hoffman accidentally discovered LSD in his lab and thought he was going mad and rode his bicycle home, thereby having the first bicycle day, as we call it. I believe that's celebrated sometime in April, maybe around April 20th, which would be interesting, but maybe before then. I'll have to look on the calendar. Why psychedelic assisted therapy? And why do I believe in it? Well, as I've said in different times in different ways on this podcast, I think the proliferation of SSRIs, antidepressants, and benzodiazepine anti-anxiety medication has been harmful in the past 50 years. We're facing things today like serotonin syndrome, and most benzos have been taken off the market because they are more addictive than helpful. And very often, the symptoms for which people take them, symptoms of anxiety, are replicated in the withdrawal of that substance, therefore making it even more addictive. And, I think a lot of people stood to profit significantly off of the proliferation of these drugs, and now we're facing the consequences. Whereas psychedelics, the indigenous ones, mushrooms, LSD, which was originally found to be in the form of, it was harvested off of deteriorating ergot, I think, in barley fields nearly 2,000 years ago. And then Hoffman was able to replicate it in the early 1900s. Point being, these substances have been around for a while, and we've read about them in different ways. And finally, we're able to do good research, and we find that they're working. And this person I talked to today, man, wow, they had it just kind of figured out in a really powerful way. I may be here talking about it sometimes, and I may sound like I know what I'm talking about, and sometimes I do. But wow, the experience that this person has had in both helping people and in their own experience was powerful. So we did talk about partnering up on different podcasts, and so maybe you will get to meet this person later on. I know the reason I was introduced to them is through my partner in ketamine-assisted therapy, Julie Addis with Ketamine is Hope. We had coffee yesterday morning locally. I tell you what, I had a hot pepper mocha latte that rocked my socks off at 8:30 in the morning. I had to get another one, and boy, that caffeine kept me going all day. Probably didn't need two, uh, what do they call it? Mocha shabalbas. But yeah, I had a good conversation about um, growing ketamine therapy, not just in our area, but nationwide. And so I wanted to talk a little bit today about my first ketamine assisted psychotherapy in my office session that was just done this week. Now, if you'll remember, I just got out of the car on, I don't know, late Saturday after driving 17 hours back from Colorado to Farmville here in Indiana. Had an amazing time in Colorado and look forward to going back someday. It was rejuvenating, but also it was good work too. I was able to do a lot of good work there. And so I came back knowing Monday was going to be my first 3-hour ketamine assisted psychotherapy session. How does that go? This could be for your general curiosity, or if it's something that you're interested in doing at some point, well, let's talk about it. I'll travel, you travel, we can do it virtually, whatever. We'll figure it out. Excuse me. So psychedelic assisted therapy, ketamine assisted therapy, sorry. Good for neuroplasticity, good. We like to call it a good brain scrub, just a brief period, only about an hour. This session was a little briefer, of some pretty good relaxation, followed by a good period of neuroplasticity, the brain growing, but also the recommendation that you do good things for yourself because your brain is open and kind of ready for new opportunities. So, how do we do it? I think we've talked enough about what it is throughout different podcasts, but how do we do it? You contact me, I give you a link to the organization I partner with, Journey Clinical. And Journey sets up a time with you. You fill out some pretty intensive paperwork about your medical history. And then you meet with one of the nurse practitioners or physicians there, and they go through and they approve you. And they also make a recommendation for what your blood pressure should be going into this, because ketamine does have a tendency to elevate blood pressure, at least briefly in the administration. And then they send you, I think, now again, this is my first time, but I'm pretty sure the first two initial doses are always going to be the same, right? It's kind of like any other prescription medication, psychotropic, mind-altering prescription medication. They only give you a little bit to test the waters. And so they sent my clients 2 sessions worth, right? So a session being 2 150 milligram rapid RDTs, rapid dissolving tablets. So 2 sets of 2 150 milligrams and then a 100 milligram booster. And so then the client calls me up and says, all right, when are we going to do our first 3-hour session? And many of you might be saying, good God, 3 hours with you, Dr. Dan? Why in the world? Hey, it's not just with me, it's with the medication too. But hey, some people find 3 hours with me to be quite engaging. Look, well, I'll tell you a little bit about the breakdown of the 3 hours of therapy. It was spectacular, amazing, beautiful. It was really cool stuff. Let's see. You work with Journey Clinical. Well, I meant to pause there, but I actually stopped recording. So this will be interesting trying to splice this together. Sorry for the mid-podcast interruption. You work with Journey Clinical. Then you contact me for 3 hours, and we set up a 3-hour run, and you come on in. And I encourage this person. I said, you know what? Much like my experiences, to dress comfy. I have all the gear for you. I've got headphones and playlists and music and eye masks and multiple blankets and all that. And, this person said, I'm going to go ahead and bring my own. And literally, she came packed pretty much for an overnight experience, very comfortable, in some of her own gear. And then I shared some of my gear as well. And in that first kind of hour, we start talking about preparation. We get prepared, we set up, we set intentions. We make sure she was completely comfortable and ready for the experience. It was her first time trying ketamine, and so had questions. Of course, we did a preparation session about a week ago via Zoom, but this was also another opportunity to set goals, set intentions, and really to prepare her mind for the experience of the journey. Also, something I have found through my work with the Integrative Psychiatry Institute has been these fun little, now I'm going to say tarot deck, but it's not a tarot deck. They're kind of artistic cards with intentions. It's a kind of one more way to focus your thoughts. And I picked up a couple of these decks. One is a Jungian archetype deck that we can choose from to kind of set some intentions there. Another is kind of an animal archetype deck, looking at the powers and strengths and weaknesses of different animal spirits. And then one that I took from my psilocybin experience in Oregon was it's called an angelic deck. And it's just basically really pretty pictures, both intentions related to spirituality. And this particular client was struggling in their spirituality, had some historic childhood religious trauma, as so many of us do, and wanted to work on that. So we chose a card from that deck. And much like my psilocybin experience, there was quite a bit in there that was helpful, but also related to the intentions she had already formed. And so that's an option or an opportunity. I think I've told you when I was in my psilocybin practicum, preparing, I was a little nervous, as so many of us are before going on a journey like this. And I was just trying to focus and meditate and kind of deep breathe. And my partner, Nick, said, well, would you like to pick a card? And I said, in my mind, like, no, I don't know. But to humor him, because I knew it'd be good for me, I went ahead and did. And boy, that card, it's still the photograph of that is still the screensaver on my smartphone, because it really connected well. So the client chose a card and we talked about that a little bit. And then we began the process, the swishing process. Now, there are a lot of theories about how to engage and entertain a client as they are swishing. What the heck is swishing, Dan? Well, with these rapidly dissolving tablets, you put them, I tell you what, when I helped the client crack these open, pulled the little protective layers off, they were pretty much already dissolved, right? This is kind of a pile of salt, slightly in the form of a tablet that you put into your mouth. And you start to digest it, and you got to it is absorbed through the mucous membranes in your mouth. I have not tried this method yet, so I don't know, but I've heard it does not taste very nice. And so she began swishing, and I read from the angelic archetype book for her to kind of help keep her mind off the swishing process. Now, while swishing, they say 12 to 15 minutes. So I set a little timer, and she swished. I read, kind of told some stories about other psychedelic journeys. One of the things in my work with Journey Clinical, which is kind of contraindicated from other work, they really hit the idea hard. Do not swallow any of the medication or the swish or the spit that's in your mouth, because once processed in the stomach, ketamine turns to norketamine, or a different form of ketamine. For some people, it causes nausea. But now there is another school of thought. Again, Journey says, thou shalt not swish. And there are other schools of thought that say, oh, hell, take the whole thing down, or ingest a little bit of it, because it will prolong the journey. I'm not sure. I have to abide by the Journey clinical rules, but I've heard otherwise as well. So we'll see how that goes. This client was did a pretty good job and did not, from what I was told, ingest any of the ketamine. So 12 minutes, and it was funny. I had, have spit cups in the office that, get sanitarily thrown away. And she kind of spit into that and said, okay, well, we should probably take the other one. Wasn't really feeling any effects. She did say it was kind of funny that she could tell the medication was kind of done in that it foamed up. And so, okay, we broke open the other tab, and she put her headphones on. She came with her own playlist. I'm not sure I'm gonna continue to do that. I'm invested in some sound equipment that'll allow for mutual playback of a speaker that I can track in the journey, what playlist it is, and then the traveler can as well. But we broke open the next 150 mg tablet, and she took that in and started swishing that. And I could tell there was some effect happening. She was really getting into her headphones, and she only had one little. Apparently, these were really good earbuds because they were quite noise canceling. Because, oh my God, unfortunately, there was some work going on in the office across the hall that I could hear too much. Fortunately, she couldn't. So swished for another 12 minutes. Ideally, did not ingest. And then again, as towards the end of that swish, could feel it, but then still came out and said, I should probably take the booster. And, this is a person that had experience with, alcohol and other, and some psychedelics in the past. So that was kind of expected. And the fact that this was a starter dose from Journey kind of made sense. So, but the swishing of the final 100 milligram booster for a total of 400 milligrams, there was a little bit she had both headphones in, and I could tell there was a little bit of giggling towards, around the 8-minute mark. And so I said, maybe it's time to go ahead and spit that out and just embrace the journey. And she did, went into the journey, and I could tell it was working when she kind of giggled a little bit and said, okay, where are we going? And really, went in and had the music going. And this is a cool experiment I'm engaging in. I picked up a Kindle Scribe where I take my notes of the person's journey so that my handwritten notes can then are ran through an AI system that makes them pretty effectively typed, but then the client gets to have access to both my personal notes I take for the client. And so, similar to other journeys that I've experienced and I've witnessed, this person seemed to profoundly enjoy it and declared that she did. It was an enjoyable journey. But upon coming out, and this was the interesting part. In my experience, IV and IM ketamine, it's usually about an hour, at least 45 minutes, with the ability towards the end, towards what we call the tail, to kind of come in and check around and make a choice. Like, oh, the medicine's still there. I'm going to go back in, and you can still experience it a bit. And I know in my first IV, I was able to do that, like, I don't know, 3 times maybe. And in the intramuscular, I even, checked in with what was going on too. Now, intramuscular, I just took a basic dose, did not take a booster, which I would have. But there was that kind of tail of coming in and out. And then there's a point where you feel like, okay, the medicine has run its course and I'm done. And then you kind of start the verbal processing. As I said, I am an IV, usually about an hour. For this participant, for this client, it was, I believe I tracked about 27 or 28 minutes, less than 30 minutes, which, if I take into consideration starter dose, right? So low dose, past experience, so maybe some not tolerance to ketamine, but just some biological tolerance. And the fact that, the bioavailability of lozenge ketamine is about 60% of a dose, right? So it is not, if I say 400 milligrams, uh, absorbed over a half hour, you're maybe getting anywhere from 40 to 60, maybe 65% of that true dosage. So it kind of made sense that she came out. And, I admit I was a little disappointed it didn't go very long. She was a little disappointed it didn't go very long. And so we just kind of started chatting. And so at this point, we're about 90 minutes in. And in my mind, I'm like, well, we might end this a little bit early. But I tell you what, this was the power of the ketamine-assisted therapy, because I had to be reminded. I was humbled. It wasn't about the medicine, as you've heard me say. It was about the integration afterwards. It was profoundly beautiful and changing for this person, because we started to reflect on what her intentions were when she came to the office and what we had discussed in preparation. And her ability to connect with her emotions was greater than I've experienced in the several years I've worked with this person. And I was reminded of something another therapist in the same building had emailed to me and to Julie about, many of the therapists that aren't trained in psychedelic assisted work send their clients to Julie and then do work after the ketamine, a couple days or maybe even a week later. And what this therapist had said about his client, who was pretty profoundly struggling, in his email, he said it was amazing, like a different person, receptive, open, ready to do the work. And that is exactly what I experienced after my client, through the tail of the rapidly dissolving ketamine, was just a new ability to recognize issues, to address them head on, to accept and reflect on difficult emotions, and then to receive empathy, to receive feedback. As a therapist, I go between kind of, as an ENTJ bald male therapist, boy, I operate in the rational lot, coping skills, and what's the plan, and how do we move forward? How do we advance the ball? But then also, I'm a therapist, so I have to deal in the emotional realm too, and that's that's good work for me because, well, it's work. And going back and forth with the client on, all right, how do we address coping so that I send you home in a positive way? But also, how do we deal with these emotions? And a lot of it was just allowing her to express the emotions, but then to work on, all right, what do we do with them? It was what it needed to be. It was what I have come to expect from ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. A profound opening, a profound welcoming of difficult ideas and topics. The client is scheduled for session number 2 in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. That's what we are recommended, every 2 weeks or so. And so we'll do that. And then after that, she goes back online with Journey Clinical to assess how that works. And if she would like to do the recommended 6 more doses for a total of 8, I would assume, and I'll let you know, I would assume they're going to increase dosage in some way, just because, as she had said coming out, I don't think I went deep enough. So we shall see. What was the meaning behind my first time working with ketamine in my private practice office? It was what we needed to be. It was what we expect it to be. It is not an SSRI. It's not something you take every day. It's not even something you come back to repeatedly. In the initial course of treatment, 2 + 6, that is what research is telling us works. And I can't wait to see how this works. I can't wait to see how this person tackles long-standing emotional issues and begins to address them in new and more effective ways. So, Dan, why are you studying psychedelic-assisted therapy? Because the one we see right now that is fully legal across the United States, ketamine, is having a profound effect on people. It's also having a profound negative effect. There are too many ketamine mills out there where you go in, you get your injection, you get your IV, they pack you up and they send you home. No preparation, no integration. That is, I have to be careful here. That is unhelpful, in my opinion, and possibly inappropriate and unethical and just wrong, right? We know ketamine is helpful, but ketamine with good psychotherapy is by far more profoundly helpful. So, if you want to explore more, if you want to try, you know where to find me. DanielAFranz.com, DanielAFranz.com. All kind of, hey, we got some retreats coming up. Julie and I are planning some IM retreats for the fall in a beautiful northern Indiana location. Oh my goodness. The cost of admission is going to be, just the views we have, but then incorporating that with some good preparation, integration, a wonderful lunch, and well, yeah, some ketamine treatment. So, hop on the website or just hit me up, email me, and let me know you're interested in that. We are still picking a date in either September or October of 2025 and pricing that out. But yeah, that's going to be good stuff. Very excited. Hey, as always, thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit of mental health, meaning, purpose, resilience, and psychedelic assisted therapy. As always, I hope you found it helpful and meaningful, and at the very least, maybe just a little bit enjoyable. Take care.